Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
All right, Vikings Vent Line every Sunday on the Purple Daily YouTube channel and podcast feed. What's going on, everyone? Declan Goff here to take you through another edition of Vikings Vent Line. During the regular season, the show rolls with Mackie, Judd, and myself, and we have Vikings fans join us immediately after the game ends. And then I still continue this show in the off-season, where I talk to fans about the previous year, upcoming things in the draft, in the offseason, who they should sign, who should they avoid, etc. So if you're discovering the show for the first time, hit the subscribe button for Daily Vikings Entertainment, or maybe you've consumed numerous episodes of Ventline and then thought, I want to join that episode with Declan. Well, you can do that. You can hit me up, VikingsVentline@gmail.com. That's VikingsVentline@gmail.com. I manage all the invites that come in there, so this is an episode you'd like to be a part of. This is a safe space. Whether you don't like Kirk Cousins or love Kirk Cousins, it's a safe spot for you to voice your frustrations or your triumphs with the team. This is Vikings Vent Line on Purple Daily, sponsored by our friends, too, at Quick Trip. Go to Quick Trip for all your great quality gasoline guarantee and your one-stop shopping as well. Thanks to Quick Trip for sponsored programming on Purple Daily. And if you haven't heard, the Purple Daily Draft Party is a go. It's officially a go. It's April 25th at the Fillmore here in downtown Minneapolis, right next to Target Field. You can get a link or can go to the link in the comments section here in the YouTube channel, or just go to scorenorth.com and you'll be able to find everything you need to know on the draft party. This is a free event. That's right, a FREE free event. So if you'd like to join and be a part of the festivities at the Fillmore, go check out how you can get your free ticket. And we're looking forward to seeing everyone there on April 25th. All right, let's get our guys in here. Let's get Josh. Let's get Gibby in here. Josh is in enemy lines. He's just outside of Chicago. He doesn't have a lot of Vikings fans around, so there's a bunch of hungry bears roaming around his parts. And luckily, he has found Purple Daily as a safe spot for you. So, Josh, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It is a godsend. I fly my Vikings flag here in Illinois. And funny enough, my neighbor is a Packers fan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I'm definitely in enemy lines here. So it's like I told you before the show, it scratches my Vikings itch. So thanks for having me.
Of course.
Can you do everything you can to convince your neighbors to keep Justin Fields? Put the pressure campaign on, not draft the QB with the Bears pick. I feel like you got a word on the street there. It's got to become pervasive in the community. No Caleb Williams to Chicago.
No, I'm with that 100%. So I don't think Fields is going to be a Bear. So unfortunately that is, but I don't think he's going to be a Falcon either. I mean, everything we heard, old Kirko, it's hopefully all system go with Kirk going to Atlanta. So
if Ryan Poles has any sense of self-preservation, he will jettison Justin Fields and draft a quarterback, unfortunately.
I hope if the Bears do the Bears thing, then they will trade that first pick and then draft Bo Nix with the second pick. Yes, that would be perfect. That would be the chef's kiss. That would be so Bears. So
good God. I could actually see it happening. Gibby, I know you've been on Ventline before, the Wilds version of Ventline, I should say, during the playoff runs a few years back. Are you in Colorado still? Didn't you move to Colorado? Do I have this right?
Still in Colorado.
Okay.
We're also having a super mild winter here. The only difference is that in the foothills, a mild winter for me means like 200 some inches so far.
Right.
You're back in Minnesota. It's been like 5 the whole time. Just wild.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. A brief side story. I snowboard and stuff, and I love actually going out west to really snowboard, but I live here in the Woodbury area, which is really close to Afton Alps, and I bought like a 5-day pass to go snowboarding this year, and I've been 0 times because it's either been no snow or 50 degrees, and it's just been, I'm not complaining that much, but I also am well aware we'll pay the price for this come here in a couple weeks or in April, and then we'll just have a delayed winter, which will just be the absolute worst thing. Well, boys, let's get into some Vikings topics here. I'd like to ask fans a lot of different topics throughout Ventline episodes during the offseason edition. Josh, let's start with you here. So you mentioned that Kirk steam with the Falcons. Maybe the Vikings go draft a quarterback. We can probably even talk about that later on. But is there a bridge quarterback in mind? Is there a veteran you'd like to see them sign to maybe just kind of hold the hand of the rookie quarterback. Maybe he takes the reins at first, just kind of ease that quarterback in. If the Vikings move on from Kirk, what bridge quarterback kind of intrigues you the most?
Yeah, so I think it boils down to whether they decide to trade up to get one of the top three. So if they do that, I don't think we get a bridge. I think you're doing that to bring in your future quarterback. And so I'll preface that by saying if we don't move up and we do end up falling back and we take a Penix or a Bo Nix or somebody in the second, there are a few guys and there's maybe a kind of a different take, but Gardner Minshew is one of the top ones. I've always liked Minshew. But the main reason I like him from last year is he was a couple passes away from taking the Colts to the playoffs, which we've only done twice in the 6 years we've had Kirk Cousins. And so that intrigues me. Right. And so, and listen, I like Kirk as a person. He's a good dude, but I'm ready for that train to go. I'm done with that. So, and that's an investment thing, right? We'll talk a little Kwesi talk. All right. I've invested 6 years of watching Vikings football. Me and my sons and my brother come up and watch a game once a year, right? So we do those things. We invest our time. We invest our money. I watch every single game. But as far as that Kirk train, if I'm ownership, how can I, after 6 years and 2 playoffs and 1 victory, say I want to reinvest in that? And so that's where I'm at with him. And that's not anything personal against him, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm going to piggyback on Josh right here because I think those are great points. I think that at a certain point, score north before we die. Vikings fans got to demand more. The pain of an awful season is so much less than what I can only imagine. Like, remember the Minneapolis Miracle feeling.
correct.
Times 1,000. Like, that so outweighs whatever bad potential there is on the horizon. The next Christian Ponder or whatever. On your point with Kirk, really quick, he is a good guy, and it's not all his fault, and probably a majority wasn't his fault. I don't think Rick Spielman gets enough ridicule for signing a statuesque, incredible pocket passer with a great arm, dropping dimes and then neglecting the offensive line for basically 4 straight years. The process was inconsistent from the start there. Kirk thrived with the great O-line in Washington, and he was kind of set up to fail. So to me, that's my never really gave him a fair shot. But obviously, like you said, it's not working. I think the thing about bridge quarterbacks is you kind of got to choose your flavor. So I laugh when you say Gardner Minshew because the 2 flavors of bridge quarterbacks are kind of game manager, going to protect the football, Tyrod Taylor-esque, Ryan Tannehill, not going to lose you games. Or do you want the more high variance? Maybe this guy pops off on a short bridge deal and has a career year. Gardner Minshew, Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield, those types that is the goal just to get to the playoffs? This also, like Josh said, depends on, are you drafting a QB high up, or are you, drafting defense, letting it ride with a bridge quarterback, or drafting a more developed guy? Draft someone high up. Like Josh said, they got to start immediately. That's just how it works in the NFL. Most of you guys are pro ready. Maybe you get then a much short, like a Tyrod Taylor or something. If I'm not a huge fan of JJ McCarthy, things like that. I'm worried, he's got the arm and stuff, but it's Christian Ponder, I think, had 1 300-yard passing game in college. And at a certain point when for, however many straight years of football, you've relied on running game and defense, he's got the physical but with something like that, you'd probably want Baker Mayfield wants to start again. Jameis Winston wants to become an entrenched starter again. I'm sure Minshew probably wants to become an entrenched starter. And that doesn't mesh as well with someone you're anticipating taking the reins in half a season or a full season. But if the Vikings don't want to trade up for one of the top 3, I say, can you imagine how much fun a Jameis Winston season? Or, I'm from Mizzou, a Drew Lock throwing the ball deep to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison season would be in if you get to 8-8 by being a boring Mike Zimmer team, or if you get to 8-8 by scoring 40 points 5 times and giving up 40 points, it's kind of the same ride, right? Just, do you want your roller coaster like this or this? So that's my thought. It depends on what Kwesi and them want. It could be a lot of fun though.
Yeah. And let me throw this in here too. So if we don't draft a quarterback until, let's say, the 2nd round, so let's say it is a Penix or a Nix or somebody that maybe isn't proven, right? They need a little bit of time. So these so I'm just going to use the Commanders, right? So if the Commanders are there and they end up taking a Jaden Daniels or whatever they do, what are they going to do with Sam Howell? So what if all of a sudden we decide, hey, you know what? We can get Sam Howell for a fifth or a sixth or whatever the case is. Bring him in and let's do this. Let's compete. Let's see if Sam Howell has some upside. Let's let him compete with Bo Nix. Let's let him compete with Michael Penix for that spot. And then you know what the worst case scenario is? One of those guys is a stud, and then you got another guy that might be good that you can then flip for a future draft pick. And so just thinking outside of the box, right? So
Howell's about as high variance as it gets along that train. You know, I listened to a decent amount of PFF and stuff, and I think he trailed off in the second half of the year, but in the first half of the year, he was like leading the league in big time throw rate and in turnover worthy. So like Jameis Winston, but younger. Plus,
but he had Ron Rivera as his head coach, and Ron Rivera there the last 2 years was just dead man walking. I mean,
is the enemy their OC? Because for a while I thought he deserved, a head coaching job, and then a lot of the stuff's come out how he's kind of an ass to work with and just difficult. And obviously it wasn't that successful last year. Let me throw one more bridge QB in here that's gonna make everybody roll their eyes. I don't think, you can only change your playbook so much on the fly in the middle of the season. I don't think KOC gave Josh Dobbs a fair shot to succeed. He was the most effective in out of structure when things were simplified. The NFL equivalent of let's just run pick and roll 50 times in a row, basically. Right. But after the bye, so few designed runs. I guess they had the one against Denver where he was blocking for, I can't even remember specifically. I was at that Mile High game, and that was talking about a gut wrencher. But I feel like, he's probably not the way to go. The mood soured, but there's a QB in there that could win 8 games, possibly take someone to the playoffs in that same high variance manner. You just need a whole off season of catering the playbook to actually take advantage of that, get some option in there, things like that. I know it's not going to happen, but I wouldn't be
opposed to having Dobbs as a backup by any means. I mean, Howell's probably the one I prefer the most. Yeah, because he does take a lot of sacks. He does make some turnover worthy plays, but I wouldn't mind him as a stopgap. I mean, the guy worked his ass off to all of a sudden become the starter of that team. And yeah, the Commanders weren't expected to be anything. In the first half of the year, they actually looked like maybe they'll be a little bit competitive. Things kind of went south for them, just like it did for the Vikings by the second half of the year. But yeah, I mean, there's some good bridge quarterback options. So if the Vikings are on the clock at pick 11, do you guys want to see then the trade up? I know we kind of hinted at that. So if they're at 11, Josh, do you want to see them move up? Is that priority number one, move up to, top 3, top 5 to get the future quarterback? Is that kind of your first priority going into the draft?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, as far as my list, as far quarterbacks, I really think the Bears are going to take Caleb Williams. So I think he'll be off the board. So number one on my list is Jaden Daniels. I would absolutely love for them to go get Daniels. I think he's got all the tools. I think him with KOC would be fantastic. So that would be, for me, that would be the big thing. If they feel that Drake May can be a guy, then that's fine. The thing is, I'll put faith in KOC and Kwesi to identify that guy. So if they say we can work with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and then I'm all for it. I'm on board for that, right? And because it's not something, as a Vikings fan, we haven't done that, right? We haven't identified, hey, this is our future quarterback. Teddy, obviously, I loved him. He fit well with Zimmer. The Christian Ponder thing, that is what it is. And then we got Kirk. That's fine. But if they identify one of those guys, it would be fantastic for them to move up. If not, if we don't take one of those guys, I'm kind of in the camp at 11. JJ McCarthy is like, I don't know. He's one of those guys that if we take him at 11, I wouldn't be upset. But I think because I think there's a lot of raw talent there, and the fact that he was with Harbaugh that did a lot of the pro type things. And so I wouldn't be upset with that. If we're not going to get a quarterback, then I think it makes sense for them to go down in the draft. Not far. Don't go down in the 20s. But get back and try to get like a third round, try to supplement some of the picks.
Can I jump in?
That's where I'm at.
On your point, Josh. So I think it's a great point that, you hired Kwesi and specifically Kevin O'Connell to find the quarterback. Kevin O'Connell was a quarterback, considered an offensive genius. If you're not going to have faith in them doing that on their first attempt, then what's the point? Like,
Right.
That's not fun fandom. We're going to second guess them before they've even made their first try. Like, what kind of mindset is that? They haven't really done anything other than the scene pick, whatever. Kwesi got too cute in his first draft with the trade back and all this stuff. Other than that, they have not really done anything to warrant like massive second guessing before it's even happened. We got them to get a quarterback, develop a quarterback. And, last year I would have loved for them to draft Will Levis or something like that as he's dropping. But as the draft's happening, I'm thinking if Kevin O'Connell, once it got to the second round, things like that, if Kevin O'Connell wanted Will Levis and thought he was the answer, like Will Levis would have been on the Vikings.
Yep.
And so if JJ McCarthy ends up on the Vikings, even though I'm not a huge fan of him and I'm worried that it's just so much based on projection, right, versus like projectable traits than actual, you can only bridge that gap so far. I remember like Deion Jordan back in the day being drafted third or whatever. Like, oh my God, he's this beast. Obviously, totally different position. But if they pick JJ McCarthy, I'm going to be behind it because otherwise we can criticize the team and stuff, but you don't want to be hopeful and excited and thinking like it's a mindset. It also means Kevin O'Connell has fallen in love. The one thing Jaden Daniels, very cool, like him a lot. Isn't he kind of like, from a trait standpoint and a physical standpoint, a leveled up Josh Dobbs? Long, lanky, straight line speed and escapability, good arm, obviously way better arm in deep pass. But to me, that's kind of a similar prototype. So I also hope if KOC picked him, it would be because he believes he can mold his offense to maximize that and that he's the fit. I just refuse to believe that. I think the Vikings picked Christian Ponder way back when, not because they thought he was the dude. It was just like there was the run on quarterbacks that all ended up sucking, like Locker and I can't quite remember the other ones, and he was just the next one in the run. And it was weird getting a quarterback here. And I just trust Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell. That's such a fundamentally flawed mindset. If he's the guy, pick the guy. We're not going to be this close that often. Trade up. Nobody remembers the picks a year or two later if it works out. If it doesn't work out, Arizona drafted, balls out or jury's out on Kyler, but like that was like a year or two after Josh Allen.
It was the next year. Yeah, it was 1 year.
Right.
Yeah, that's I kind of lost my point there, except I believe that if Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi draft a quarterback, it's because they think he's the guy. If that involves moving up, great. Also, one other point on the bridge quarterback. If you do pick a guy in the middle, or you draft maybe a Penix or a Bo Nix, in the bridge quarterback discussion, don't you want to make sure that you get a bridge quarterback that teaches them good techniques and good habits versus like, imagine getting someone who's going to learn behind Jameis Winston or Drew Lock or Gardner Minshew. As much as I think those would be the maximum level of fun Viking season, I'm more scared about them teaching them bad habits that like leak into their games than a Tyrod Taylor or a Tannehill or somebody who, again, better habits if they're going to be studying the clipboard behind him. I think that's something you have to consider.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that it's going to be them teaching them, right? And so that's why I think the Josh McCown hire, I think that's a big deal. And so I think the teaching is going to be KOC and McCown, and the bridge guy is more just that, right? He's just going to fill in. He's going to get us through the year, allow whoever that is to kind of just dissect all of KOC stuff and do all that. And then listen, if things don't go well with that bridge come halfway through the season or whenever it is, and we want to throw the young guy in, throw the young guy in. And so I think the teaching is that Josh McCown, I really like that hire because I think that's the guy that's going to have a lot of say as far as the
only
teaching
upside
part and right. And how to be a professional and how to, handle that position. So
maybe I'm scarred from the Timberwolves where like Andrew Wiggins taught Karl Anthony Towns how to play awful defense, taught like the next person how to play. And it just becomes pervasive that, whether they learn from the coaches or not, it's a workplace environment. You're in the QB room with Sam Howell, who's throwing 60-yard Hail Mary absolute prayers and doing like 720 spin around pick sixes. And it worries me a little is all I'm saying. Not again, I think Howell could get you maybe like 11 wins next year or 3 wins next year. Who the heck knows? That could be a lot of fun, but I think it's something to consider.
So we've talked a lot about offense, draft strategy. What about Vikings defense? So Brian Flores comes in. It's a little bit of a work in progress, but then they go on this run, in thirds basically. First third of the season, still bad. Next third of the season, one of the best defenses in the NFL. Last third of the season, kind of bad again. Do you guys think, I'll start with you, Josh, do you think the Vikings defense is under the right track with Brian Flores? Is it a good thing he's staying here? Can they improve upon what they did last year? What's your kind of take on the Vikings defense?
Yeah, so I think they're on the right track with Flores staying, right? So I really like the Flores hire. I like I said, the McCown hire, Flores staying, all of that is fantastic. And I think that with what he was given, I think he was fantastic, right? And so last year, I mean, the year before that was just a train wreck. And so I think he vastly improved that. I think he had the locker room. The key to me, and this is yet again to go back to the Cousins piece, right? So if we are going to bring Jefferson back at a high contract, if we're going to pay Cousins, 2 years guaranteed money, then that probably means that Daniil's not back. And I love Daniil Hunter. That he's one of my guys. And so I want them to bring Daniil back because I think he's just lock him in for 3 years, pay him what he's worth, and be done with it. But I also think that's the piece where if you don't bring Cousins and you get a quarterback on a rookie contract, it allows you that flexibility, right, to shore up that defense. Our corners weren't great. So there's not a ton of corners out there to get. But what I don't want the Vikings to do is I don't want them to go get these mid-tier guys and treat it like a project thing because we don't have the cap space to go out and get, like an Xavier Howard or a Fuller or somebody like that. Right. And they'll be out there. But the key is they have to draft good defensive players. Ivan Pace was phenomenal, right? That was like pull him out of a hat. Holy cow, he was great. And that's the example of having a Flores because he was able to get the most out of Ivan Pace, right? And so they have to draft defense well this year, I believe. And I think we can be on the right track. We just got to get the right pieces. Our line's not good. Davenport needs to go. We need to get another defensive tackle. We need to get another edge rusher, keep Daniil. And then Ivan Pace in the middle, we're good. And hey, roll the dice. Go get one of those top tier corners that can shut down. And that's going to help Byron Murphy and all those other guys. And then safety too. I mean, obviously Harrison Smith, if he's gone, that's a big hole. But I think we can quickly fix that for the simple fact that we have one of the best defensive coordinators in football.
Well, so Josh, would you rather spend the draft capital to move into the top 3 to 5 and get one of those top 3 quarterbacks for the future, and then probably you're making 0 day 1 or day 2 picks on defense? Or would you rather get the bridge quarterback, stay, pick someone with 11, or maybe move back a little bit? Then you have more defensive capital, but you're not necessarily, you're getting slightly more of a project, because that really seems like it's the choice. You can't have both.
Yeah, 100%. So really what it boils down to is just pick a lane, right? What's our identity going to be? And so if the lane is that they say, hey, we're going to go ahead and move up and we're going to get one of those top quarterbacks, I'm on board. Let's rock and roll, because I think we're probably a guard away from having a really good offensive line. Darrisaw, O'Neal, all those guys are good, right? Ingram made strides this year. Bradbury kind of is who he is, but if we bring JJ back and listen, if we go out and get a Pollard or we get somebody, or give Ty Chandler a shot, then I'm fine with that. JJ and Addison, the outside, are good. So that's my thing. Just pick a lane. And so if you identify that after Williams and Daniels, right, we don't like any other guy that high, then either stay at 11 and take a Jared Verse or take the defensive tackle from Texas. I'm good with that. But you got to kind of pick. If they move up, then defense is going to be tough. But that's why Kwesi and those guys, the later guys, they have to identify those late guys. If a Chop Robinson is there, whatever that is, they got to identify that and be good later in the draft, because that's where good teams become great, is when they can get those 3rd, 4th, 5th round guys to be starters or be legitimate backups.
It's kind of a crapshoot at that point.
Right.
I feel like the data is like after the 3rd round or even after the 2nd round, it's about just quantity of picks and then hitting on, I mean, Pace wasn't even picked, right? But, or I don't know if the jury's out on Caleb Evans still, things like that. But I agree with you, pick a lane. I think the only lane you don't want to pick, which is like the median in the middle of the street that's going to mess up your suspension, is the re-sign Kirk lane, because it's just, you're not going to win the Super Bowl with the defense as it is and the money. And if you're re-signing Kirk, you're probably not re-signing Daniil. I like Daniil a lot. As I said, I do like a lot of PFF stuff. I feel like it's helpful where he has a lot of high impact plays, but between those, he doesn't impact the game as much as some of the other dominant defensive ends. That being said, if you don't re-sign Kirk, you can totally re-sign him. I would, for aging purposes, give him a high AAV for a slightly shorter deal, like you said, maybe 3 years or something. Make sure that the contract is tradable in an attractive manner. I think that's huge, because then you can always get off of it if it turns out that you're not ready to really compete. The other thing I think is it's easier for like a young rookie quarterback to come in with an elite offense and make a team interesting and maybe flirt with the playoffs than even if they've got a totally mediocre defense, right? Again, high variance. Flores, we already saw with mediocre players, is going to create turnovers. He's going to make things, it's going to be greater than the sum of its parts with Brian Flores, where Donatel was literally the opposite. So I really think that if you do go for the quarterback, which, I hope they do, I think we're all just ready for something new, would be really great. I think you could not ignore the defense, but realistically, you're going into the top 3. You're not drafting like a Trent McDuffie or something like that in the first or second round, because you're giving up your first round pick, you're giving up your second round pick. And so your defense is going to just float for a year or so. You try to amass the picks in the back end, find more hidden gems. And then the next year you can really go full bore on defense. Because, like, let's be real, no matter how good the defense is, no matter how good the offense is, let's say we get a Drake May or a Jaden Daniels, like, you're probably not winning the Super Bowl in year one. Even Patrick Mahomes, right, is for, like, maybe you get close or something. But to me, you draft a guy that high, you're really trying to launch in year 2. Right. When you get a little under the belt. Yeah. And so I think you can then treat the defense that way, because you can get impact defenders at the top next year.
So you can get defenders, but what it does is, if you don't bring Kirk back, it frees up that cap space then to go out and say, let's get a Matabuke, let's get a Christian Wilkins, so we can shore that up. I mean, and that means we bring Hunter back. And so we can do that, but you're just doing that through free agency, right? And so that's the difference. We draft a quarterback high. We don't have the draft capital, 100% right. But you can bring in guys to shore those lines up and the defense, but you're just going to have to probably do it more through free agency than you are through the draft.
But you're probably not, like, just timeline wise, even like you don't want to throw your QB into a situation where he has to score 30 points a game to win. Like, that can lead to bad habits, things like that. So I totally agree. You don't re-sign Kirk, and then you can shore it up to at least. All of that last year is just like, get the defense to average, right? And then things can happen. And so I think you get the defense to average in year 1 with the top end quarterback. And then year 2 is when you hope the defense goes into top 10. Your quarterback is taking the leap. You get the magical, like, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, rookie Joe Burrow kind of rookie contract. Like, think about the Bengals, like, made a good defense out of nowhere. Burrow was awful. That team was awful to start. They upset the Vikings when the Vikings have 19 false start penalties in a row to start the season in that game. That was absolutely insane. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, their defense becomes good as Burrow's rising through free agency, Trey Hendrickson, through a couple good draft picks. I think that it's like, it sucks to go into a year thinking like you're not going to have a chance to win it all. But to me, everything's got to be looking, whether you go deep bridge or QB, everything's got to be looking towards 2025.
Mm-hmm. All right, boys. Love this stuff. Great takes here. Before we wrap, any shout outs, any last takes you love to give? Josh, we'll start with you, and then I'll go to you, Gibby.
Yeah. A shout out to all my family. My wife, who she's not a diehard football fan, but most of the time she doesn't know whether their Vikings are doing well or not doing well because I'm probably yelling or screaming either way. All 3 of my kids, Alex, AJ, and Addison, they're all Vikings fans. My boys and I, like I said, we try to get up to a game every year. My brother comes along; he's a Bears fan. And so we try to get up to US Bank Stadium once a year. So shout out to them and Yeah, and now all these Bears fans that have stayed silent for all of these years, now all of a sudden they're coming out of the woodwork, and
Yes, they are.
yeah, and now all of a sudden they're going to win a Super Bowl next year. So
Nah, man, the Bears fans are like the Mad Men meme where it's like I pity you, or I think about it. It's like I don't think about you at all. Like we don't. Trubisky, Fields, they're talking so much BS. Like they got to show it first. I have no worries about that franchise.
No, and listen, that's the whole point. The whole point to all of this is that they've got to get this offseason right, because if we don't, we're not even talking about being contenders in the NFC conference. We're talking about being contenders in the NFC North, and all three of those teams are on the upward trend. And so if we don't get this offseason right, woo, boy, we could be in Viking purgatory for a while. We could be the Kirk Cousins winning 9-10 games and maybe make the playoffs, and then drafting 16, 17, 18, and then we don't even have a shot at one of these top tier quarterbacks. So oh, God love them. I pray for Kwesi and KOC every day. Let's please get it right this year.
Gibby, what about you, man? Any shout outs, last takes before we wrap up?
I'm just shouting out the Minnesota Timberwolves playing Sacramento tonight. It's been, I was checked out on Timberwolves basketball for like 10 years. It just wasn't worth the emotional investment. No improvement, just really awful defense, like 10 years in a row and stuff. They're amazing now. I think they're by far the closest Minnesota team to potentially a title. I think Western Conference Finals this year would be a pretty good achievement. But it's funny. This show is all about Vikings. Before I die, I would be curious for the two of you. You're from Wisconsin, Josh, but Declan, if you had to just quick fire rank 1, 2, 3, 4, your hierarchy, your priority for the baddest or most desperately you want to see Minnesota team championship, Wild, Twins, Wolves, Vikings, what would your ranking be?
Vikings 1 for sure. That would this town would go insane. So Vikings are 1 for sure. I know they've won 2, but I'm a diehard baseball fan, and I wasn't alive for 87 or 91. So the Twins would be 2 for me. Wolves would be 3 because I do think that's important. Wild right now are 4. I'm just so, and that's because that is just simply because I am so checked out of that current group right now that it does not excite me. A few years ago, I probably would have had them 1 or 2, but I would probably have those in those order of Vikings 1, Twins 2, Wolves 3, Wild 4.
I'm basically saying I'm Vikings, Twins, Gap. Then I think I go Wild, Wolves, because I feel like the problem with NBA playoff basketball is like a third of all the games are stinkers.
Yeah.
Right? You just get like random 25-point blowouts where the team mails it in and conserves energy. And it's just like, I can't imagine what winning 4 straight hockey series as a Wild fan would be like, because there are so few stinkers in the NHL playoffs, and that's just electric. But I think it's funny that, for all of us, it's clearly Twins and Vikings top, and it's like, well, shoot, the Wolves might do it first, but obviously that'd be great too. So go Minnesota. Let's actually do it for once. So
yeah, and
check out Target Field if you haven't been. It's top.
I have been, and so I can tell you this: I'm a diehard Cubs fan. So I'm from Illinois. So I'm a diehard Cubs fan. Over 100 years they didn't win a World Series. They won it in 2016, and that was an awesome feeling. And I want to have that same feeling when the Vikings win a Super Bowl. Yep. Hopefully before I die. But yeah, I got to see the Twins play. 2 of my favorite players all time. I was alive, for the 87-91, and 2 of my favorite players, Kirby Puckett and Joe Mauer. Those I love those guys. And Target Field was awesome. I love Minnesota. I lived up there for a couple of years. I went to school up there, and I always consider it God's country. So I'm not a Minnesota resident, but I would love to be back up there. But my wife hates winter, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, after this winter, it might not be so bad anymore.
If this is our new winter, then anyone can honestly live in Minnesota. Hey, Josh, Gibby, thank you so much. Great stuff here. Great takes here on Vikings Vent Line. If anyone wants to come on a future episode, hit me up. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Back at full strength with Mackie and Judd on Monday.